is naturalist Charles Darwin, who created a firestorm of controversy with his publication of The Origin of Species.
A little known fact is that Dr. Caleb Jackson invented a cereal that was the beginning of today's multi-billion-dollar cold cereal breakfast industry. He called his cereal granola. And if that sounds a little bit like granola to you, here's the rest of the story.
And now it's time for Fascinating Facts from the Castle of Wellness. Fascinating fact number 1, the house that Granola built. The story begins at the Castle of Wellness in Dansville, New York, with Dr. Jackson and his creation of a whole grain cold breakfast cereal he called granola. Following in Dr. Jackson's footsteps, Dr. Harvey Kellogg, the owner of a sanatorium in Battle Creek, Michigan, also began to manufacture and sell a similar product he also called granola. As a result of a civil court case filed by Dr. Jackson, Dr. Kellogg changed the name of his cereal from granola to granola. Charles William Post was an American entrepreneur and a former patient at the Kellogg Sanatorium. Witnessing Dr. Kellogg's great success marketing granola, he decided to start his own cold breakfast cereal company and successfully launched a product he named Post Grape Nuts that subsequently created a fortune for his family. Charles Post and his daughter, Marjorie. Marjorie Post, now a very wealthy society debutante who ultimately met and married another multimillionaire, the legendary Wall Street broker and financier E.F. Hutton. Following their marriage, Marjorie and E.F. Hutton planned and designed their dream home. When their dream home was completed, they called it Mar-a-Lago. Today, Mar-a-Lago is the home of President Trump and his family. So, following the sequence of this story, Mar-a-Lago is the house that granola built. Whoops, I'm sorry, Dr. Jackson. I mean the house that granola built.
Now this is what I call a healthy snack. A granola bar and a green smoothie. So the next time you have munch on a granola bar or have some granola in your cereal, just think for a minute about Dr. Jackson, the Castle of Wellness, and granola. No, granola. Dr. Caleb Jackson was not a medical doctor, but his assistant, Harriet Austin, was in fact a licensed MD. I believe this is very noteworthy because during that era, there were very, very few female doctors in the traditional medical field. Dr. Austin observed that the majority of the women who were coming for the water cure were also suffering from various forms of abdominal distress. She correctly concluded that the source of the pain being experienced by these women was caused by the fashion of the times, which called for the wearing of whalebone corsets that constricted and restricted the function of their vital organs.
Assisting Dr. Jackson in his efforts in Dansville was Dr. Harriet Austin, a female physician in an era when female physicians were almost unheard of. She was an ardent believer in women's dress reform and created what she called the American costume, in which the traditional floor-length woman's garment was replaced by a shorter-length dress, coupled with trouser legs to preserve the modesty of the times. Female patients at the water cure were encouraged to wear Dr. Austin's American costume and leave the uncomfortable and unhealthy whalebone corsets in the closet.
It was happening in Paris and it was happening in New York City. But one of the most important changes in women's fashion was the one that occurred in Dansville, New York, where the work of Dr. Harriet Austin harkened the beginning of the end of those whalebone corsets that constricted and restricted the function of vital organs. This was a great step forward in women's health.
And now it's time for Fascinating Facts from the Castle of Wellness. Fascinating fact number 2, the pantsuit revolution. Amelia Bloomer is credited with creating the first women's slacks or trousers. The women's right movement credits Mrs. Bloomer for this culture-changing style of fashion, but this is only partially true. The fact is that her design ultimately evolved into women's athletic wear, as shown by this vintage photo of a women's basketball team. And these girls are dressed and ready to play sports. The original American costume as designed by Dr. Harriet Austin. And this photo shows 2 ladies wearing a fashion update of Austin's American costume with trousers covered by a partial front skirt. Here's an early version of Austin's straight leg pantsuit. Today, the woman's pantsuit is more popular than ever, serving as both professional and casual wear.
Well, I just have to say I had no idea that Dansville was such an important part of the American history, especially for the women's movement. If it wasn't for Dansville, I could still be wearing one of those skirts that was down around my ankles.
I'd like to talk about an exceptional woman, a name you all know, Clara Barton. Just about everybody knows that Clara Barton was the one who started the American Red Cross. She also served with great valor during the American Civil War, acting as a nurse to the Union soldiers. Following the war, Clara became very, very ill. In an attempt to regain her health, Clara went to a sanatorium in Europe. It was in Europe that she learned about the great work being done by the International Red Cross. Clara Barton was really inspired by the work she saw being done by the International Red Cross. And although she really wasn't feeling any better, she was inspired and determined to return to the United States and start an American Red Cross.
Most children are taught about the heroic Civil War service of Red Cross founder Clara Barton, but some facts are not taught. For example, her little-known but critical connection to the castle in Dansville.
How the castle in Dansville was instrumental in helping Clara Barton overcome illness and start the first chapter of the American Red Cross.
Home again in the United States, Clara Barton was determined to start an American Red Cross. Being diagnosed at age 55 as being seriously ill, Clara Barton actually came to Dansville as a patient of Dr. James Jackson at the Jackson Sanatorium, then known as Our House on the Hill, where she remained as a patient for 2 years. Upon recovery, she chose to stay in Dansville and remained a resident there for the next 10 years. In the year 1912, Sarah Barton died at the age of 90, concluding her lifetime legacy of public service and extraordinary accomplishment. She had established the first chapter of the American Red Cross in Dansville, New York on August 2, 1881, and went on to establish chapters throughout our nation. It must never be forgotten that Dansville was the first child of the American Red Cross. Based on her return to health through Dr. Jackson's methods, Clara Barton issued the following statement. The general means of promoting health is through proper food, water, bathing, dress, sunshine, open air, and pleasant surroundings. Little or no medications are relied upon.
And now it's time for Fascinating Facts from the